Okay, good morning everyone. We're recording. Welcome. So we'll see who's going to be coming in. I see Julia's coming in, so we'll give it a few minutes, but we'll get started because I feel like to be respectful of everybody who's coming on time, that's the most important thing, to honor that. Hi Julia, welcome. How are you doing? Hi, Sarah Tikva, nice to see your name. Hi, everybody. Just a reminder, you're welcome to have your cameras on or off, whatever you like. Hi, Sarah Tikva. So we're gonna get started, and want to welcome Esther for the first time. I want to just start, first of all, by reminding you that this is actually part 2 of last week's Shiur, because it ran so long. It was like running long, so I'm doing a part 1 and a part 2. So for those of you who have not heard part 1, don't worry. You can go back to the recordings. Again, the recordings can be found either via the link tree, which we're going to type right here. I think you have to do HTTP first, but it's linktree/Dr. Ozer, and that will take you to the Google Drive. Or you can also, there's a link through that to YouTube, where you can find the audio recordings. Also, in the Google Drive, everything is there, including the recordings of the Zoom. So you can listen to part 1 in depth. What we'll do is we'll do a brief overview of part 1 so that we can get into part 2 for this week. And again, if you have to drop off at any point, it's totally fine. You can always pick up on the recordings. Okay? So I hope everyone had an amazing week. Here we are, Parshat Lech Lecha. And the title for this Shiur as part 2 is Culture and HaShem's Creation. So what I want to do is just start with thank yous. So again, thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we all made it through another week and that we're here together again, Baruch Hashem. And that we're handling whatever it is that we're handling, both the blessings and the challenges, which are also blessings in disguise. So keeping that in mind. Dedications. So every week, for those of you who are new or haven't heard before, every week I welcome you to post in the chat whoever you would like our learning together to be in the schos of. So for this week, I would like to add shidduch for Aviva Bas Bracha, refuah shlema for Daniel Ben Chana. I want to also have our learning in the schos of Tzila Ruth Bas Yafa Shendel, that she should be matzliach in her learning. And in her big test today, that's one of my daughters, and she asked me specifically to daven for her today. So we'll add her to the she should be matzliach on her chumash, big chumash exam. And anyone else that you have that you want to put, thank you. Anyone else that you have that you want to put in the chat, anyone who needs a refuah, anyone who needs a shidduch, anyone, whatever it is, please go ahead and post, and we'll have the learning be in the schus of what we need. And that, of course, I always say that our study together should move us forward towards Mashiach, the revelation, Mashiach Tzidkenu, Bezat Hashem. Okay, so I always like to begin every shiur by bringing a tzaddik or tzadekes into the equation. I believe fully that we have to live our lives standing on the shoulders of the giants that have come before us, because this is what really, in this day and age, how challenging things are, this is what really can hold us up, is to cling to the schosim of our avos and our emos and the tzaddikim who have come before us. So last week, if you remember, hi, welcome. Last week, if you remember, we had the yahrzeit of Rav Ovadia Yosef Zatzal, and this week we have 2 very special. We have more than 2. There are actually quite a few, but I want to touch on 2. We have the yahrzeit this week, Bezat Hashem, of Sarai Menu, on the 5th of Cheshvan, He B'Cheshvan, which, actually I take that back. It's the 11th of Cheshvan, I think. Hold on. And then that actually translates to the 5th of November. I'm getting my English and my Hebrew dates messed up. But let me go and open it up right now so I'm not making any mistakes as I'm talking to you. So, yes, I was right. So, 11th of Cheshvan is the 5th of November. which on the calendar is actually Shabbat. So if you want to light a candle, Le'elui Nishmas Rachel Imenu, so then you would light that candle right before you light your Shabbos candles. And Be'ezrat Hashem, that it should burn well into Shabbos and on her Hilula. So one thing that I might have known at some point in my life, but had forgotten, is that it also happens to be the yahrzeit of Binyamin. Binyamin ben Yaakov. So obviously Rachel's son, Binyamin, Yosef's brother, he's one of the leaders of the Shvatim. So you have two big yahrzeits that you can light candles for right before Shabbos. So I want to just say briefly a little bit about each one of those tzaddikim. And I'm right now referencing an app that I love. The app is a Tzaddikim app. If you're not familiar with it, it's let me see if it has a formal name. I don't know what's the name, but you could look up Tzaddikim. Anyway, this app is awesome. It looks like that, and basically it tells you all the Tzaddikim that they've found that have yahrzeits and on what days. And I feel like it's an amazing chizuk to read about who came before us, and you can also light candles for them, Le'elu Nishmas. So I have a question. When you think about Rachel Imenu, and again, you're welcome to be on camera, and by all means, please unmute. You want to add something, ask something, whatever. What do you think when we mention one of our imaos, Rachel Imenu, what comes to mind? I want to ask you, as Jewish women and as people that are interested in a Torah life, I'm assuming because you're here, what comes to mind when you think about Rachel Imenu? Please unmute and share whatever you would like to share.
The sacrifices that she did, she gave up her, her chatan, her sister, Leah. Mm-hmm. She did a lot of sacrifices just so that she should embarrass her sister.
Right. Absolutely. This is one of the major things that she's known for. What else? I have a question, Orly. When you say that about the sacrifices, so let's take it just a little bit deeper, because we know the stories, right? We know, but I want to know, because this is what I've been trying in this. One of the things I try to take on in this last, year is the idea that when I hear all these things that I've heard before, which what you just said, Orly, is like a pivotal point in the history of Am Yisrael. Really, when you think about it, her action really changed the trajectory of Am Yisrael. Right, the fact that she had the sensitivity, the fact that she cared about her sister being embarrassed, the fact that she mevatered, the fact that she gave up something so significant, really altered the course of Am Yisrael. So I'm curious, how do you? And you guys don't have to answer this out loud if you don't want to, but I want to pose the question. Part of this course and how I'm teaching it is the idea that I want to instill a shift in paradigm and a shift in thinking, in thought, right? That was our very, very first class, if I recall, was about the power of thought and why we think and why Hashem gave us this opportunity. So when we think about that, how do we internalize that? So it's what I want us to do when we're talking about tzaddikim and tzaddikot, and we're thinking about what they brought into the world and what channels they opened for us, is to understand that it's not like a faraway concept. It's not like, we think about it, she lived thousands of years ago, and it's just this ephemeral idea. No, she's here. She's with us. She's always with us. She's Rachel Imenu. She is our Ima, right? And the Imaot and the Avot are here with us, always accessible and listening, and they're aware of what's going on. So when we talk about that she did that, we have to ask ourselves, when we bring these things up, how do we take from that and integrate it into our own being and into our own life in terms of how we think and how we behave? What else do we think about when we think about Rachel Imenu? Who else can share something? I know you guys know. Hi.
Sorry, Dr. Mia. I'm late.
You're welcome. Come in.
Thank you. So my personal experience with Rachel Imeno is as a first-time mother and being away from family and friends. I decided there was a moment that was very challenging for me, psychologically and spiritually, going through the process. I don't know if it's postpartum depression. I don't know. I haven't tackled this in. And then I decided, okay, what can I do about it? So I started to pray for Rachel Imeno to develop in myself the kind of relationship that she had with her sons. To have inside of me, to develop inside of me the type of love, the type of compassion, the type of serenity, I think. Because I can even imagine to be living in a tent in the middle of the desert and going through what she went through. And even though my life has much more luxuries than she ever had, I struggled very, very much. And I felt that it helped me. In some darkest moments, it helped me. So that's my personal story.
Amazing. So you, if I'm understanding, you try to connect with her to pull from her strength and to pull inspiration from her, which is amazing. And Hashem should bless you that you should have an easier time in whatever it is that you're going through. All of us, right? Bezat Hashem. Amazing. Thank you very much for sharing that. And I think that that's an amazing capturing of, sometimes I ask myself, why did Hashem create the system in which we have tzaddikim, right? Because if you look at every other religion, they have, so Islam has prophets, even in Christianity they have some, but it's not like what we have. There's nothing like what we have. We have every generation, we have people that we identify as tzaddikim, right? So we saw with unfortunately the loss of Rav Kanievsky, who was one of our Torah greats in our generation, and Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, and the loss of those giants. But we see other people, they're not at that level, right? Because that's how Hashem created the system, that every generation is unfortunately most of the time a yerida. But we can still look to see who are our leaders. So today we have Rav Zilberstein, right? We have still a handful of tzaddikim that we look up to say, okay, these are the leaders of our generation. So, hi Julia. So when we talk about tzaddikim and tzaddikot, this is exactly why I believe Hashem granted us this schus, because He knew that as we get closer to Mashiach, and I believe with every fiber of my being that we will see it in our lifetime, Be'ezrat Hashem, that we need something to hold on to. We need something to look at and to hold on to and to learn from and to emulate and to get inspiration from in chizuk. And so what you're describing is exactly that. You are really looking up and looking to our Ima, Rachel Imenu, to give you koach. And that's really what we're meant to do. These are not supposed to be faraway ideas and stories and fairy tales. These were real people who lived with their own challenges in their own time. I think one of the things before we move into the shiur that I want to mention about Rachel Imenu is really just the concept of her burial and where she's buried, and that Hashem, I believe, Rachel Imenu, in addition to being kind of labeled as the mother of Am Yisrael, even though we have 4 Imaos, she's really like the Ima, right? Rachel Imenu. She's really the one who stands above and apart in this matter specifically of all the 4 Imaot, is that she's really considered like the mother of Am Yisrael. And why do we think that? When we look that her burial, her resting place is literally, on the roadside. And, it said that Yaakov in Ruach HaKodesh understood that Am Yisrael is going into exile, and that Am Yisrael was going to need her prayers, and Am Yisrael is going to need to know that she is there for us by the roadside, waiting for us to come back, and crying for us, and davening for us, and that we can be there. looking to her, and we are meant to do that. And there's a very powerful segulot. There are many stories of Yeshuos. There are many stories of people who have tapped into Rachel Imenu. There are significant stories of Rachel Imenu. How do I want to say it? Making appearances. I don't know if you guys are familiar. There's a very famous story about her saving multiple soldiers on a particular mission, where you heard that story where she was supposed to go into various houses and they ended up all being booby trapped, and they would go in, and she was standing there saying, don't come in, it's a trap, and every single door they went to, she was there. And they finally asked, who are you? Who are you? What are you doing? This is lady in the middle of this place. And then she said, you don't recognize me? You don't name me? I'm your Ima. I'm Rachel Imenu. And then that story went on, till now. I don't know exactly when that happened, but I do know that it's a true story. And there are just stories, a lot of stories about people who went and davened at her kever. There's a story, I'm forgetting the name of the rabbi. I want to say Avishalom, but I don't. I think that's wrong. It just happened recently. I think it was last year. It was. I tell you who it was. Hold on 1 second. I have his picture, and I'm forgetting his name. I'm embarrassed that I'm forgetting his name. Anybody recognize him? I'm going to find out his name, and I'm going to let you know. I'm so embarrassed that I don't know. I have like a gazillion tzaddikim here, but there's the story about how he was crying when he went to her kever, and was with his students on her yurtzeit, and he came with a whole list of people that needed yeshuos and davening, and they said that when he was there, he was just bursting out crying, and he said out loud in Yiddish, he said, I know Hashem told you not to cry, but I'm telling you, cry for us, cry for Am Yisrael, and after that, his students asked him, Rebbe, if Hashem told her not to cry, how can you tell her to cry? And he said, a father can ask or demand of his daughter not to cry. He said, but I'm her son, and I can tell her to cry. I can tell her, cry for me, Ima, cry for me. And that's the epitome. That summarizes, cry for me. That's all of us. All of us can say to her, please cry for me. I need a Yeshuos. So there's a little bit more probably than I was planning to talk about with her, but who there's not enough to say about Rachel Imenu. Just take advantage of it with her yurtzeit and her son Binyamin, who happens to share the same yurtzeit. And she died very young, so she didn't have a very long life, but she had a very meaningful one, of course. Okay, so this is Rachel Imenu. Hashem should bless us that we should all have the schus of being as powerful and influential, and that our davening should be heard the way her davening is heard for Am Yisrael, for us and for Am Yisrael. Okay, last week, the Shiur is called Culture and HaShem's Creation. We got into in depth the idea of culture. Does anyone want to take just literally 2 minutes and just help me to summarize what we discussed last week? How we talked about culture, and I was giving you we were going to get into 2 aspects of how Hashem designed the culture of Am Yisrael, and how do we know what that culture is, and how do we tap into what it's supposed to be as Jewish women. So we only got into one of them, and that's why we have a part 2. So does anyone want to volunteer based on their notes, whatever notes they took, what we got into last week, a little bit about culture? What was the first thing that we discussed?
Happy to summarize.
Great.
Thank you, Dr. Mia. You started with telling us about the organizational leadership definition of culture, and how it spans everything from climate to rules of the game to your skill set, what you bring to the table, shared meaning behind words and phrases and traditions. And then we moved into talking about how Hashem created us in a way that Rabbi Bitterman says that nothing more significant for a Jew is that you could choose your own environment
right.
in which you live. We talked about how certain Jews had to separate themselves from their environment, whether it was Abraham or Yosef, whether willingly or unwillingly, and
yep.
how their challenges in the separation help preserve either the culture that Hashem wanted for us or help start a place where Jews could thrive.
Yes.
And then we talked about Havdalah being a separation between holy and the everyday, and how Israel as a nation is separate from other nations, and that there are aspects of creation that are meant for us versus aspects of creation that we need to guard ourselves from because they're not meant for us.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Julia. Does anyone have anything else they want to add? I think that was a really great summary. Thank you. I appreciate it. So what we're trying to understand is that we know Hashem had an intention in his design of this world. We know Hashem had an intention for Am Yisrael. We know Hashem chose Am Yisrael separate and apart from all of the nations, all other nations that exist in this world. We know that we're a part of that nation. We know that as Jewish women, we have particular role within that nation. In fact, it's written in multiple sources that really the future of Am Yisrael, at all points in history, for all of Am Yisrael, rests on the shoulder of women. The Ben Ish Chai, right there, the Ben Ish Chai, you see him behind me? The Ben Ish Chai talks about the fact that so many different responsibilities fall on the shoulders of women, Jewish women, and that the nation is dependent specifically upon the actions of Jewish women, right? Isha banta beita. The woman builds the home. Chas v'shalom that she should destroy the home, but she also is fully equipped with that capability. So you're talking about that the Jewish woman has the ability to build the Jewish home or destroy, chas v'shalom, the Jewish home. So when we're looking at how Hashem created his system to build the culture of Am Yisrael, the first part of this is the idea of Havdalah, separation, total separation. And we got into the idea of Ben Kodesh L'chol, Ben Or L'choshech, Ben Yisrael La'amim. Fundamental, foundational concepts that we say every single week in Havdalah between Shabbat and Motzei Shabbat. Right? All words that we've all heard 1,000 times. But now we need to really take them in to say, what does that even mean? So this is part one. And remembering that the idea of Havdalah for the Jewish woman means that everything, how it's not just for the Jewish woman, because we see obviously in terms of dress, in terms of eating, in terms of socializing, schooling for our children, and so forth. This is affecting all of Am Yisrael. That there is a Havdalah, there's a Lahavdil, ben Am Yisrael and all of the other nations. How we act, eat, live. All right, it's an entirely different culture, an entirely different system, an entirely different rhythm in which we live our lives. Okay, so I think we're all good and buttoned down on part one of Havdalah. This is the first aspect of the culture that Hashem has created for us. Okay, so what I would like to do is I would like to move in now to the second part, part two. So the second part is Hafrasha. When I say Hafrasha, what comes to mind? When we talk about this word Hafrasha, what do you think about? What's the most obvious? Chala, right? Sarah Tikva wrote it in the chat. Chala. Hafrashat chala. What does it mean? I don't know how many of you do Hafrashat chala or have ever done Hafrashat chala, but just to summarize, to make sure that everyone's Sarah Tikva likes mecha. So just in case you're not familiar or you haven't done it, so Hafrashat chala is one of the 3 mitzvot d'oraisa commanded to women. Okay, so what are the 3? What is one? So we've identified one is Hafrashat chala. What are the other 2? Commanded d'oraisa. Right, it's separating part of the dough. That's exactly right, Hafrashat chala. What are the other 2 mitzvot? Nida, which is Tarasa Mishpacha, correct? And candles. Okay, hadlakat nerot. Excellent. So these are all people are putting in the chat. So for those of you who are listening on the audio recording, I'm repeating what's happening in the chat here. So we've got the 3 mitzvot. We have hafrashat chala, hadlakat nerot, and taharat hamishpacha. These are the 3 mitzvot commanded to women deoraisa, meaning from the Torah. Okay, and the Ben Ish Chai, going back to what I was saying about that, said that just the concepts of taharat hamishpacha, this mitzvah and this commandment falls entirely on the shoulders of the women of Am Yisrael. No matter how much a man would want to help in fulfilling the mitzvah of taharat hamishpacha, it is not physically possible for him to be responsible for that mitzvah. If you're not familiar with taharat hamishpacha, I don't want to get into that right now, but it does have to do with the laws of family purity and the cycle in which a man and a woman, a husband and a wife live their lives together, and it's revolving around the woman's menstrual cycle. So I'm going to just leave it at that. If you want to learn more about that, that's a separate concept. But this is a mitzvah only the woman can be responsible for. The Ben Ish Chai says that the woman, I mean, it's written in many different places, but if you read the halachot from the Ben Ish Chai in particular, he talks about that the woman is fully responsible for the chinuch hayeladim, the education of her children, rests in the hands of the woman of the household, okay, the mother of the bayit, okay. He talks about kashrut. In fact, there's a very funny, I find it funny, I don't know if he meant it to be funny, but I find it funny. There's a very funny quote from the Ben Ish Chai that he says that even if a man wanted to be responsible for the kashrut in the home, he's completely and totally incapable. That only a woman has the skill set to really mamash worry about the kashrut of the bayit. And so really the kashrut of the kitchen and the kashrut of the home also falls on the shoulders of the woman. And he in his way says, man, it's just simply incapable, which I thought was a funny way to say it. But we see that the idea of the responsibility of the kedusha, of the Havdalah and of the Hafrasha of the bayit of the Jewish home is really resting on the shoulders of the woman. So for those of you who are just joining, we just actually right now are getting into the Shiur content. We're saying that part 1 of the culture in which Hashem created Am Yisrael is Havdalah, is a separating Am Yisrael from all the rest of the nations. And now we're getting into part 2, which is Hafrasha, which is Hafrasha is a separation. So when we talk about Hafrashat Chala, separation of part of the dough to the now. I will tell you that when you talk about creating, by the way, when you do Hafrashat Chala, it has to be a certain quantity of dough. You cannot just make, a small challah and make Hafrasha. You can make Hafrasha, you can separate dough, but bli bracha. You have to have 5 pounds of dough in order to qualify it to be able to say a bracha on the hafrasha. The mitzvah of challah, of hafrashat challah, has to be done with a minimum amount of dough in order to say the bracha and fulfill the mitzvah. There are special brachot that you say. There's a special bracha you say, and also special also davening that you say when you say the bracha for hafrashat challah that are very, very beautiful. If you've never done it, it's definitely something. So I can tell you that we don't understand why Hashem has us taking bread from this. I mean, who can understand? These are things. Even it's like mikvah. Going to the mikvah. We don't understand it really, right? We kind of can theorize and we can try to intellectually digest, but these are commandments. These are things we do because Hashem told us to do them, whether we really understand them or not. From what I've read, when you do Hafrashat Chala, you are tapping into a cosmic energy that is like nuclear bombs in Shamayim in a good way, like you're setting off, explosions of light and bracha for you, for your family. I also had someone tell at my Shabbos table, we had a guest, and he was talking about something that he learned about Hafrashat Chala, about the idea that, I wish I could remember all the details, but basically that he summarized saying that this Hafrasha, this action, is actually meant to also protect you from Chas v'Chalila, any sicknesses. That there's something in this action of taking hafrasha, according to Gematria, and it brings a certain kind of level of protection to the woman and to her family, be'ezrat Hashem, that it should, and for all Am Yisrael. So, when we say hafrasha, this is the very first thing that comes to mind, because this is what we know. But I want to bring to your attention other elements of hafrasha, so you can see the system, the design, the wisdom within which Hashem created Am Yisrael. So we have Havdalah, separation, total separation. We have Hafrasha. Now Hafrasha, even though there's an aspect of separation, the idea of Hafrasha is really a building of Kedusha. And that is the difference between Havdalah and Hafrasha. And how those two things work together. Havdalah is separation. Hafrasha is elevation, Kedusha. And so when we take from this Shiur and last Shiur and we put them together, and I say to you that Hashem created a culture for Am Yisrael that we are meant to live by, okay, is the idea of separation, and by that separation, elevation. Separating and creating Kedusha, holiness. This brings us a picture of the culture of Am Yisrael. So let's talk about this Hafrasha for a minute and look at examples from the seed level of creation of Breshit that we just read a couple weeks ago, and see how Hashem built and built and built on this concept of Hafrasha, and witness firsthand how through the Havdalah and through the Hafrasha He created Am Yisrael as a nation of holiness, Am Kedusha. We have the first Hafrasha. Anybody want to take a guess what it was? It's in directly from Breshit. What was the very first example of Hafrasha? Anyone want to take a guess?
The tree that they were not allowed to eat from a certain tree. They had to separate from, I don't know, the tree of life, that they were not allowed to eat from it.
Okay, it's a good guess, but even before that, even before.
The water, separation of the waters, taftonim and top and bottom.
Okay, so this is a good example of separation, but it's not necessarily Hafrasha. That's a good example of Havdalah, separation. I'm talking about Hafrasha, which Hafrasha is inherently when one thing is taken out from another thing in order to make it Kedusha.
So Adam being Chava taken.
Yes, Adam and Chava, the first Hafrasha, okay? So now, what's amazing about this? What's so amazing about this? We know when Hashem makes a Hafrasha, not just Havdalah, not just separation, but Hafrasha, He takes one thing from another thing and elevates it to a state of higher Kedusha, okay? So what does that inherently tell us about the creation of woman?
Okay, sorry, I don't know if I'm right, but it's just so many things come to my mind.
Yeah.
Okay, so Adam was created facing down from the earth. And then Chava was created from his ribs and facing up.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, and then in this state, so then Adam it is facing down, and then there's a separation, and she is the elevation because she's looking up. It's like when, for example, Abraham separated from Lot, and that he looked up to the sky, because God, Hashem said to him, look up and see all this land. Even though Lot also, he raised his eyes. So I don't know the difference between the raising his eyes and lift up the eyes in Hebrew, because I don't know Hebrew yet. But it's just So many things come.
There's so many things come to mind, right? So this is, I'm glad, I like to see that you're thinking. That's the whole point of this shiur, is that we have an opportunity to go deeper, that it should be triggering. Your mind should just be like kind of starting to shoot off sparks, right? And you start to see dots connecting and start thinking and questioning things, right? When we talk about that Hashem made a hafrasha, He literally created Chava from Adam, right? We know that whatever is taken from is automatically on a higher level of kedusha than what it was taken from. So the thing taken is on a higher level than what is taken from. And it's written in multiple sources that the woman comes into this world on a higher spiritual plane than the man. Right? We know that she comes with a certain level of binah, right? That we are connected to a certain element of creation that gives us that, what do we want to call it? A sixth sense or a certain intuition. They say women's intuition, right? We know that men have so many more commandments than a woman. They have to do so much more and they have to work so much harder to elevate themselves. Right? Because we are now coming in. We are not from the earth. We are from Adam. We are already coming from a living, breathing being. So we are coming in with a certain level of kedusha. Now, I want to pause for a minute and tell you something incredible that I read about when I was studying Breshit and I was reading Rashi. And we're talking about, he's talking about the idea that Hashem, and not just Rashi, it's written in a few different places, that when Hashem created Adam, He took dirt, from all corners of the earth, right? So you might ask yourself, why does it matter where He took the dirt from? It matters that He took the dirt from here and not from there. You know, it seems a little bit kind of silly. But it tells us the depth of the creation. Why? We all know that Adam came from the earth. Where do we all go when we're finished with this body? This body that's carrying our soul around with us, this body, this livush, this dress, this clothing that we're wearing called a human body. Where does it go? When we're done using it, when Hashem decides in 120 years that our time is finished and we've taken our last breath and the neshama goes back up to Shemaim, where does the body go? Into the earth. Okay? Now, what's mind-blowing is why Hashem took earth from took earth to create Adam from all the corners of the earth. It's written so that the earth would accept Adam back when he was finished with his body. This is mind-blowing concept. The earth is a living entity that by implication of understanding that Hashem wanted the earth to accept Adam back in a final resting place, that the earth has the koach to reject. The earth is alive and has the koach to reject something. This gives us an entirely new appreciation for and understanding of Hashem's creation, that every bit of it is a conscious part of creation. That Hashem had to be so mindful to make sure He took earth from everywhere, so that no matter where man passed, no matter where he took his final breath, that he could be buried in that space, that the earth would accept him back. Right? This absolutely blew my mind. Okay? But moving forward now, back to it. Yeah, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
Yes, because I've been reading after Miller.
Uh-huh.
It's so profound.
Yeah.
And then in his Bereshit, he was talking about the power of the earth.
Yes.
And then because of the seed, all the scientists try to get a seed and try to open it, that acorn seed. And they can't. They can't. There is nothing they can do. They can open. And then once this goes into the earth, because of the living being, the living substance inside of the earth, it's allow, it's like a surrendering. The seed can itself surrender, let it open, and And I have a question in the middle of the night about the man created. So, because there's a difference between the dust, the dirt, and the mud. So I know also, I believe that from Rashi commentaries, the difference between the dust and the dirt, because the dust is separated granules and the dirt is together and they bind together. And then Paulo helps, so, but the man was created from dust, from dirt, or from mud, the mix between water and earth.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Because I'm also reading about from the book Our Heritage, about the month of HaShem. And then there was saying 3 things are equivalent: the earth, mankind, and the rain. Without earth, there's no rain. Without rain, there's no earth. Without both, there's no mankind. And then that's why came the question about, so was Adam created from the dust, from the dirt, or from the mud, the mix of the water and...
So it's an amazing question. I don't know the exact answer. I certainly can find out for you. It's not an issue. I'll just ask my husband. I'm sure he knows. But what's interesting about that is the idea that we also know that our bodies are comprised of approximately 70% water. We are mostly water. Right, so we know that all of those elements are integral to our existence. But it's a great question, and I'll find out for you the answer. B'ezrat Hashem, just remind me. If I forget to do it, just remind me. Okay, B'ezrat Hashem. But let's go back now to the hafrasha. So we now understand. We can have an appreciation now for the creation of woman as a hafrasha from Adam, and what that significance of that is, and how that, from a very seed level, helps to define our culture as a holy nation, and the role of woman within that. Okay? All right, the next hafrasha. Israel. The land of Israel is a hafrasha from the rest of the world. If you go into the Kabbalah, which I was learning a little bit from my husband about this, there are various olamot, there are various levels of worlds, right? So we're in the lowest level, we're in Asiya. So you have Adam Kadmon, you have Atzilut, Biriya, Yetzirah, and Asiya. We are in Asiya, okay? When we are chutz la'aretz, when we are out in the galus, outside of Israel. When you go into Israel, you are one up, you are in Yetzirah. If you ever gone and visited Israel and you find that you don't really need as much sleep, I don't know if you've ever had that experience before. When I go to Israel, I find that I literally can be up like 18 hours a day and I don't even feel it. It's like you're riding the wave of being on a higher spiritual level. There's most people will report that when you are, you're from the Galus and you go to Israel and you leave, there's a certain depression that you feel. There's a certain sense of sadness and longing for going back there. And I don't know if it's written anywhere, but I for one believe it's because you get a taste of what it is to be in a higher olam, in a higher level of existence in our world. They say that every step in the land of Israel is a mitzvah. It's a step in Kedusha. And that's why, because literally in the physical plane and in the spiritual plane, there is a hafrasha, there's a separation between Israel, the land of Israel, and the rest of the nations, everywhere else in the whole wide world. So the hafrasha of Israel from the world. Now, the hafrasha of Yerushalayim from Eretz Yisrael. From Jerusalem from the rest of Israel. Jerusalem is standing on a holier, more Kedusha space than all of the rest of Am Yisrael. There are certain cities in Israel that are considered holy cities. They're considered holier than Am Yisrael. They are separate and elevated from in the rest of the land of Am Yisrael. You with me?
So you would that one, that level, the third level, what you call the third level up? Yetzirah?
Yes.
What is that you're talking about right now?
Okay, so
Israel.
So Israel is in the level of Yetzirah. This is not really necessarily so important for you guys to know. I'm just kind of throwing it out there to understand that the physical planes are tied also to the spiritual. And Israel is existing in a higher spiritual plane than the rest of the entire world, even our physical world. Does that make sense?
So it's still Yetzirah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so then you have the next hafasha. So we said you have Israel from the rest of the world. You have Yerushalayim from Israel. You have the Beis Hamikdash from Yerushalayim. It's another hafasha.
That's what I was asking.
Yes.
Is that considered the next level?
You know what? The truth is, I wish I knew the answer. I don't study. I know certain things in Kabbalah that I've studied throughout my lifetime, but those answers are above my pay grade, as I say. I'm really not 100% sure. I could definitely find out more about it, but the idea of seeing that, like, every time you're going to a higher level, it's a hafasha. It's this from this, and this is more holy than that. Does that make sense? So you have Beis Hamikdash from Yerushalayim. Then you have, even from there, Kodesh HaKodashim from Beis Hamikdash. Right? So we see all of these, and we understand, obviously, in Kodesh HaKodashim, it was only the Kohen Gadol that could go in there, and only for a small period of time every single year. So we see every time Hashem makes a hafasha, every time He takes something from something else, and He's making it holier and holier and holier. So these are all just examples. But when we come back to the main point, right, and what I'm really trying to get across from you today, is the idea that our culture, the culture that Hashem intended and designed for Am Yisrael, is a culture of separateness and holiness. Havdalah and hafasha. So we had, in one of our courses, we talked about the difference between transformational and transactional. You remember that? So remember at the very, very beginning, I said there's kind of a little bit of a method to my madness of how I'm designing these courses, and how even though they can stand alone, they're really building one on the other. So we started with the idea of the power of thought, and how Hashem created us different, the human being, from all other creation. Right? We talked about transformational versus transactional in everything that we do. We talked about the idea of integrating, right? When we talked about after the Chagim, we talked about the idea of integration of our experience and what we learn. Not just having it be an intellectual pursuit, right? Which we know that Hashem likes when we think, because that's why He gave us the opportunity to do so. But integrating in order to manifest holiness and change within ourselves, avodah ala midot, which is really why we're here. If someone is a perfected being, a perfected soul, they no longer have a reason to be in this olam. The reason to be in a body is because the neshama cannot make tikkunim, cannot make corrections without being in physical form. Once the neshama separates from the body, it loses its mechanism through which to do two things: to make tikkunim, meaning corrections and improvements, and to do mitzvot, which are tied to each other.
Like in this parsha this coming week, with Avram separating himself from his home, his family, and going through the trials of his life to become purified and
exactly. Amazing way to bring in the parsha. Lech lecha la'aretzecha le'mecha, right? Go to, the one thing that I love about this parsha, I always think about it. If you know the Hebrew, lech lecha, is anyone here Hebrew speaking? Gabriella, you know, no? Who has
in Hebrew, but it's not my first language.
Okay. So it's interesting how it talks in Torah. Obviously, there's no mistakes. When you do look at some of the Mefarshim and you look at commentaries on Lech Lecha, it's a very interesting use of language, because when you translate Lech Lecha, you're actually saying go to yourself.
Yeah. Right.
Right? Lech, go, Lecha, to you, go to you. On the surface, it makes absolutely no sense. But we know that the Torah has hidden messages in every single letter, every single word, every single combination of words. And so, not that this is not necessarily Shiur on the Parsha, but when you tie that in, like Danielle so beautifully did, and you talk about the idea of Lech Lecha, go to yourself, that he's giving marching orders to Avraham Avinu, literally the seed level of all of Am Yisrael. Go to yourself. What are we meant to do? What are we supposed to do with this life? Why we have a neshama in the body? Why? It's because this is literally why we are here. We are here to work on ourselves, to perfect ourselves, to elevate our neshama, to separate and to elevate. We are here to fulfill the mitzvah of being a part of Am Yisrael and fulfill HaShem's intention for us within this world. I've said it before, when you are in this world and you're in a body and you are a Jewish soul, you are an emissary of HaKadosh Baruch Hu walking on two legs on the planet. You are a representation of Torah and Am Yisrael. That is, whether you are or are not, that's for you to know. But that is why you were created, and that is what Hashem intended for us as a holy nation. To be His emissaries on this planet. And to be Or Lagoyim, to be a light among the nations. You know, it's why people love to love us or why people love to hate us. Because they know that we are inherently different. We were created differently. We were created for a different purpose from all other nations. And that is the whole essence of our culture. Is to be holy beings representing Hashem in a Torah lifestyle on this planet. So it's a huge responsibility, and it's one that Hashem has tremendous rachamim on us for, because it's a very, very hard job, especially when you take it seriously, and especially in this day and age, right? But when we look and see all the tools that Hashem has given us to participate in order to achieve this mission, we know that He's really given us everything that we need. It's just up to us to educate ourselves and to tap into it, and to try to integrate everything that we learn into our lives so that we're able to apply it and fulfill Hashem's goals for us. So the primary tools, one of the primary tools that He gives us is this concept of Havdalah and Hafrasha. And the way we do that is by understanding our role, understanding the culture that we're meant to be a part of and that we're meant to create for ourselves and our families. And one of the things I touched on at the end of last Shiur that I wanted to circle back to, because I know a lot of people had already left the Shiur, is the idea that in addition to that culture, that greater culture of Am Yisrael, and that greater culture of being a part of a community and the rhythm of Jewish life, and the greater culture of what we're creating within our homes, is the culture that we create right here in our minds. Tying back to our very first Shiur. We really need to evaluate and assess, with the knowledge that we gain, what is the culture that we're creating for ourselves, our own personal culture that exists within our own minds. How are we participating in Am Yisrael here? Here is where it's all beginning, in our minds. And so this tool that Hashem gave us of thought, of how we can think and how we can apply and create, co-create our existence with Him, which is a part of our purpose here, is to be co-creators with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in our own lives and in the sustenance, sustaining of Am Yisrael, is to evaluate our culture in our mind, to assess what we are letting in there. Are we protecting our minds? And through there, what are we letting into our homes, into our communities? How are we tapping into the concepts of Havdalah and Hafrasha to create an Am Kadosh? So with that, I want to read something to you, because I feel that Hashem made it really, really clear for us that we were meant to be separate and holy. Okay? And all we have to do, in addition to looking at our own parsha today, Lech Lecha, is looking at one of my favorite parshiot, because I feel like it is the prime directive that we see. You know, we see Hashem giving us hints to our mission throughout all of the Torah. But if you look at Parshat Kedoshim in the book of Vayikra, it says, "Vayadaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, daber el kol edat bnei Yisrael v'amata Elokim Kedoshim tiyu, ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokechem. Kedoshim tiyu, ki kadosh ani Hashem Elokechem." You will be holy because I am holy. Because I, your God, am holy. He's not making a suggestion. He's not offering it up as an option. It's written in command language. Kedoshim tihiyu. You will be holy. Because I, your creator, am holy. And because you come from me. You are a piece of me. You are a hafrasha of me. When I breathe life into your body, it is a part of me going in to that body to create you. And as a result, you are innately and inherently a holy being. You are my child. You understand? So we see it direct from the Torah, direct from the source, that Hashem has commanded us, that this is our mission, this is our purpose, it is His vision for us, that we are to be holy and separate from all other nations and from all of His creation. We are the crown and glory of His creation. And so every single time we take a step towards Him, every single time we participate in His mitzvot, and every single time we honor Him through our actions, through our thoughts, through how we live our lives, even taking inch by inch closer to Him, with whatever it is we take upon ourselves, whatever it is we try, and whatever it is we do, we have to understand we are coming closer to our source, and we are bringing holiness and connection to our Creator. Because that is our being, that is who we are. We are an Am Kadosh, because Hashem created us as such, and He designed a culture, a Torah culture and life and system for us to be able to reveal, be a revelation in this world on His behalf, in partnership with Him. Does this make sense?
Yes.
All right? So it's something that is, I believe, tremendously inspiring, something that gives us chizuk as a nation going through so much difficult times right before we are on the petach of Mashiach, Be'ezrat Hashem. It shows us that there is meaning. There is meaning behind everything. There is meaning behind our life story. There is meaning behind every experience we've ever had, for better or for worse. There is intention in Hashem's creation, both in our own lives and in Am Yisrael. And our purpose here is to unveil and reveal His Kedusha in this world. So we have a huge responsibility and a huge honor, a schus, to hold that responsibility. And the more we tap into that, the more we elevate ourselves to be close to Him, and Be'ezrat Hashem to reveal His light in this world and to bring Mashiach, because ultimately that's our end game. I want to bring one other thing that I read that is actually from a secular book from my doctoral program that I was in. And it's from a book that calls Measure What Matters. Okay? And the idea in this book is the idea of you have to understand where you're going in order to get there. You have to understand what is the final destination. You have to understand why you're doing what you're doing and where are you doing it, and where are you headed. And you have to measure what matters. So in the context of what we're talking about, we have to understand what matters. So they talk about this concept of objectives and key results. You have to understand what is your ultimate objective and what are the key results. If you take that and you apply it to what we're talking about here, your objective, your goal, where you're headed, is Olam Haba. Your ultimate goal, your ultimate objective is not even in this Olam. You're just here utilizing this Olam because Hashem gave you the schus to be in a body in order to capitalize on what that means, in order to earn your reward in Olam Haba, in order to build your Olam Haba for yourself, for your children, for your spouse, in the way that you need to grow and build for your Olam Haba. So your ultimate objective is there. It's not here. But in the meantime, we have to plan steps for ourselves along the way of how to maximize our potential and utilize what we have here in this Olam in order to build for the ultimate goal of Olam Haba. Does it make sense? When you begin, and Rav Avigdor Miller talks about this, if you're brave, you can go and get the book Olam Haba by Rav Avigdor Miller. It will blow your mind and change your life if you're ready for it. It's not a book for beginners. It's heavy, heavy, heavy lifting. Okay? But this book, after I read this book, although there was a lot of content in there that I already knew, the way in which he frames why we are here and what our ultimate goal is, and in how he discusses and ties into the concepts here that we're talking about of being Havdalah and Hafrasha, separate and elevate, it will completely change your life. It completely changes your entire understanding of why we're here. And I've been thinking about, and I think I'm going to do it, I want to put together, B'ezrat Hashem Bli Neder, I want to start courses. It's probably going to be a 2-parter on the idea of Gilgulim, right? Reincarnations, how a soul reincarnates and what that means. He talks about it a lot in the book Olam Haba, and the idea of why a neshama needs to come back in order to continually correct and improve and elevate. Because ultimately, when we get to Olam Haba, we want to have it be at the highest level possible. And the only way to do that is in a physical body. The only way the neshama can continue to elevate and improve is through the mitzvot that Hashem commanded and through avodah midot. Does this make sense?
I wish I could write all your words, but you go too fast.
I'm sorry, but that's why I record it. If I go slower, we're going to be here forever.
Beautiful.
I ask a super quick question. You had mentioned in your parenting class how when we do mitzvot, it elevates the neshamas of our predecessors and how we could do something in the merit of someone's neshama. Does that tie in here as well? How if we're here in our reincarnation for a specific purpose and specific elevation in this life, are we helped along by say the mitzvot from our descendants?
100%. 100%. In fact, I was just reading in Tomer Dvorah. I try to read Tomer Dvorah every day. I was just reading the other day. Let me see if I can find it, where it talks about schus avos. It talks about the schus of our forefathers, the schus of the people who came before us, and how oftentimes it's in the schus of our ancestry that Hashem's rachamim on us, His mercy on us, is ignited, right? Because of things that our ancestors have done for us. And then the flip side of that, right? That the other direction of that is that when we in this olam reveal light, when we do mitzvot and we build schusim, that our ancestry in Shamayim, they get a piece of that, right? So let's say your great-grandfather was a big tzaddik, or your great-grandmother, and they raised their children to Torah and Masim Tovim and mitzvot, and they did all these things to raise up holy Jewish children who then carried on in the Torah way of life. They have a chelek, they have a portion in everything that their children and their grandchildren and their great-grandchildren and on and on and on do. They have a portion in that. I always say that, I really don't have, in my lifetime in general, some people have midos that are stronger than others, and they have things that they have to work on. For myself, I've never ever really been a jealous person. I'm not somebody who ever really looks to someone else and says, "Oh, I wish I could have that." It's not one of the midos that I have a big challenge with. I've challenged with other midos, but this one in particular, jealousy, it's not something I've ever really grappled with so much. But what I have found to be interesting is that the more I work on myself, the more I understand the system that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put together, and the more that I work on myself and work on elevating myself and work on my connection with Hashem, I find that I'm jealous of the Olam Haba that I see that people are building for themselves. So according to Torah, it's a good jealousy. Why? Because it's the kind of jealousy that pushes you to want to be better and do better, right? Like there's a bad kind of jealousy. You say, "Oh, I'm jealous that guy is driving that kind of car and I'm driving only this kind of car," right? That's a stupid jealousy. That's a bad kind of jealousy. But they say that when you're jealous of someone's mitzvot or Torah, and it's the kind of jealousy that drives you internally to do better and to want to be better, that's the good side of jealousy, right? Every midah has a bad and a good. This is the good kind of jealousy. I look at people who are doing mechazek rabbim, who are bringing the multiples, the rabbim, the greater Am Yisrael to tshuva, right? You look at Rav Yosef Mizrahi, and you look at Rav Zamir Cohen, and you look at some of the Rebbitzins out there that are mechazek rabbim. I look at them and I say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so jealous of their olam haba, what they're building for themselves." Why? Because they have a portion in every baalei tshuva that they make. Every mitzvah that someone does as a result of something you do, you get a portion in. If you make a donation to a yeshiva, you get a portion of all the Torah study that's going on over there. You teach someone and tell someone how to light Shabbos candles, you get a portion of that light that they're revealing every time they light Shabbos candles. I mean, what an incredible system that Hashem, what a motivation to not only to better yourself, but to reach out to your brothers and sisters and inspire them and want them to be able to do better as well. Right?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it might be like a whole class on itself. The
Okay.
whole Ayin Hara
Yeah,
concept.
that is a whole class on itself.
Like you were saying, it's like a good jealousy. Same thing maybe with, being, for your children. When you see families and you really love the way, their connection with their kids and the whole system in the home, and that's like you aspire to, or people that aspire to want to be that way and have that type of a home. Now, where does the Ayin Hara come in? I don't know.
Okay, so
No believer in it, and my husband is. So we always talk about this concept, like, well, you don't want to don't even talk about it too much. Don't say too much because of this whole Ayin Hara concept. So I don't know if it's something that we could discuss in like 1 minute, but.
Well, we can totally do a class on it, actually. I think it would be an amazing class. I can do more research and I can bring sources. I think it's a great class to do on it. But the bottom line is that like I'm saying, there's always, with everything, there's always a positive aspect and a negative aspect. Even with something like anger, right, where they say that anger is so damaging, right, and you're supposed to try to avoid getting angry in every way possible. But there's another aspect to anger that is actually a good aspect to anger. It's the kind of anger that you would demonstrate that's coming from a very well thought out and controlled space, where you're needing to correct or realign someone. Like, let's say a Rebbe is going to act angrily with a student. It's not the difference being he's acting angrily. He's not angry. Right? Makes sense? Ayin Hara, in this case, in general, when you talk about Ayin Hara, you're talking about something that's damaging, right? It's an evil eye or a negative eye, and it's something that is, when you talk about it, the idea that if somebody is jealous of you or they see something that somehow, chas v'shalom, that it can take from whatever you have or cause some kind of issue. Chas v'shalom lo aleinu. Okay? But when you're talking about it in the way that we're talking about it, wouldn't be Ayin Hara. It's almost the opposite. It's Ayin Hatov. Because you're looking at them and you're saying, oh my gosh, it's an admiration. You're admiring. You're wishing them to have even more of what they have. and that you want to reach to that level. So it's not that you're wishing that you're jealous that they have, and that you don't want them to have, God forbid.
Right.
Does that make sense? So it's a lot about your intention and your thought, right? Because if you are inspired by somebody and you want what they have and you want to be like them, it's not that you would, chas v'shalom, want to do that in place of what they have. It would be in addition. You want to be additionally revealing light, not in place of them revealing light. And that's kind of a defining difference between what would make something, an ayin hara, chas v'shalom, versus coming from a place of being inspired. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, okay, hold on. Let me just go quickly to my notes before we're wrapping up. Okay, so I want to pose for you guys. So for those of you that are new to the class, I encourage everyone to always have a journal and to, be taking notes. And then I always like to give homework because we want to integrate. So we want to integrate what we're learning. So, and I'm trying to come up with like kind of cute key phrases to help you guys like that to remember. So you've got your idea of integration. You've got your chokhmah, your thought, why Hashem gave us the power to think. You have your idea of transformational versus transactional. And from this part 1 and part 2, you have havdalah and hafrasha. You have separation and elevation as a part of what can help you to create the culture in which you're living your life according to a Torah way. Make sense? Okay, so here are the things I'm going to pose for you to consider as you reflect on what we're learning and kind of go deeper in your own processes. Okay, hold on, missing my page. Okay, so last week I told you things that you can think about are what is the culture you're creating for yourself, in your mind, in your home, in your personal space. We discussed that when you leave your home, generally speaking, we have very little influence on the exterior culture, right? We don't know who we're going to meet walking down the street. We can choose to where we go, right? We can choose to go to the synagogue, to the day school. Those things we have a choice on where we engage in the greater culture of society, but we don't necessarily have all that much control on that. But we do have control on the culture we're creating to an extent, the culture that we're creating in our home and the culture we're creating in our mind with our families, with our children, with our spouses, and so on and so forth. So making a cheshbon about what is that looking like. Okay, so here are some new questions for this week that you can reflect on. Where are you honoring Hashem's directive to be a separate and holy person as a part of a holy nation? Where are you in your life honoring Hashem's instruction, Kedoshim Tihiyu, to be separate and holy person as a part of an Am Kadosh? That's the first question. Okay? Next question. Harav Avigdor Miller talks about the concept of turning your back to the world. What does a righteous, holy Jew do? In essence, in order to achieve his mission, he has to, in many ways, turn his back to the world. Meaning, I find what I need through a Torah construct. Through the life of an observant Jew, I find what I need. I don't need from the greater society. I don't need from the greater culture. Okay? Now we are exposed to it. We're swimming in it, if you remember the story I told about the fish. But we don't need from it. And so Rav Avigdor Miller has a concept of turning your back to the world. Where are you turning your back to the world? Where do you need to start turning your back to the world in order to create for yourself a culture of Kedusha? And are you, the final question, are you measuring what matters?
Hold on, where do I...
Go ahead.
Can you repeat the second?
Yes. Where are you turning your back to the world? Or where do you need to start turning your back to the world in order to kind of redirect yourself, to pull your sustenance from a Torah-centered life and from a Torah-centered culture versus the greater culture of society that we're, exposed to on a day-to-day basis. Okay? And then the last question is, are you measuring what matters? Do you have your objectives, your primary goals for yourself, your family, in alignment with Hashem's creation of us? Right? As being a living, breathing entity and a part of Hashem's creation of a holy being and a holy nation. Okay, so lots to think about. Do we have any questions or comments before we finish for today?
I wanted to share something, but I don't know if anybody has to go. Actually, I like to paint, and I wanted to thank you, because last class and also today, as we are learning, somehow all these ideas are coming to my mind.
Amazing.
Of things that I want to paint. From last week, you
Wow.
mentioned was the fish. So I sort of did like a little sketch on my notebook as I was writing my notes of like water and these fish going up, and then on the side like a blur of all the outside world. Sort of like the fish separating themselves.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing! That's amazing!
Wow, this is like giving me all these really special ideas. And today was more like thinking of like a mix of different colors and sort of like, like a background. And then in the middle, like two hands holding together, sort of like us and Hashem holding us through all this balagan in the world.
Wow. I mean, I don't know if you're ever...
Somehow all these things are coming to me.
That's incredible. I don't know if you feel comfortable, but if you ever feel like, showing us, well, I will love to see. That's incredible. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else? Questions, comments?
So I have a lot of comments, but I'm processing my mind. It's just because I did not watch yet the last class, so
okay.
I'm going to do it. So hopefully next week I can comment more. But I have a vain question, and I apologize in advance. I'm so mesmerized by your heart or your title. I'm just so in love, and I really would love that you share. Where do you get it? Your tihos, because that's one of the mitzvah that I'm embracing.
Beautiful.
And for myself. So if you don't mind to share in the WhatsApp group, that I would really appreciate it.
Oh, okay. I'll tell you. There's actually quite a story behind my tichels. And if you want, if you are able to be patient, because I don't want it to take too much more time, I would be happy to start next week with that story.
I would love to.
Does that sound like a good deal?
For me, yes.
Okay, all right. Just remind me, and that's how I'll start next week. Okay, is that good?
Thank you.
Fair enough.
Question.
Yes.
Nia,
Yes.
how do you separate? Well, your family does not always go in the same, same direction as you are, and you still want them around you for holidays and Shabbat.
Yeah.
And they don't go along with everything that we do. So
Yeah.
what do? We still have to have them because we have to show them love. And,
Yes.
But we are also going against certain laws.
Yes.
That's always a struggle for me.
Yes. So you should know two things. First of all, very important and valid question, and I would say that probably, I'm not basing this on anything, but certainly above 90% of all of Am Yisrael is dealing with this. I would venture to say that the vast majority of frum people, certainly in the Galus, and even in Am Yisrael, even in Israel, in Eretz Yisrael, there's very few people that are not touched by that today. The idea that you're living a certain Torah lifestyle and you have relatives that are not. So I would say a couple different things. I actually learned something. I don't know if you remember Shabbos between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. I actually spoke at a Shabbaton, and I learned something there. The rabbi who was speaking was talking on this issue because someone had raised this question. Because it's not simple, because these are people that we love and care about. Sometimes it's our children, sometimes it's our parents. I mean, this is the way of the world today. And he said like this. He said that halachically, because someone was saying if like a lot of times people that are doing kiruv, they'll invite people to their house, let's say for Shabbos dinner, but they know that they're going to drive there, right? And it's halachically, it's a big question. Can you invite someone, let's say your child, you want them to come, but they're going to drive there, and it's a big shayla. And I won't get into the whole thing, but the bottom line is what he said if after the third time, so let's start from the beginning. You need to make a space for them to be able to stay over, and you need to invite them to stay over. You need to, in order for you to not be held responsible in Shamayim for them breaking Shabbos or whatever it is that's going on, you need to offer them the opportunity to be able to have a way to keep Shabbos. So how do you do that? I'm using this as an example, Shabbos. Is you would invite them and you would say, I have a bed for you, I have a place for you, I will love if you'll spend Shabbos with us. Right? So you've created the space for them to have the opportunity to be Shomer Shabbos. What they do then beyond that point is on them. But he said there's a limit to that, meaning if you know already after 2 times, 3 times they're going to drive, you have to actually stop inviting them. Now, that's not to say to tell them don't come. Whatever they do is on them. If they show up, they show up. But there's a certain kind of like line that has to be drawn when you are inviting someone and you already know they're going to not, if after 3 years you're inviting someone for Shabbos dinner and after 3 years they're not getting it, that they can't drive on Shabbos, and you have to stop inviting them. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a dance to this.
I have this one, but I have not hold down to it yet because it's very hard.
It's very hard. It's very hard. And I'm just sharing with you what I learned, and everybody has to make their own cheshbon. I will tell you the other piece of this too is that I feel that we have to do 2 things. We have to emulate Hashem in that Hashem has endless rachamim with us, endless. He gives us endless chances and endless opportunities to do it better. And I feel like we have to emulate that. And I feel that, again, I'm only speaking for myself. I'm not a rabbi. I'm not, I'm just sharing with you from personal experience. And I hope I'm not going to say the wrong thing. But,
thank you.
Yeah, but I feel like when it comes to things like very close people, parents, children, siblings, that kind of stuff, we have to love them first and foremost. We have to love them, and we have to meet them where they are. And what I mean by that is that if you have a child, let's say, that's off the derech, and we know that in from Judaism, there's just no space for sports, as an example. Nobody cares. Like it's considered a complete waste of time. It's considered a distraction, so on and so forth. There's a lot of different sources about that. Various things that exist in our culture, in Western culture, in Western civilization, that are just completely meaningless in a Torah context, okay? But let's say you have a child who's not on the derech, chas v'shalom, many of us do, and you need to find a way to relate. You need to find a way to stay connected. You need to find a way to have that umbilical cord to be able to keep that love and connection flowing, so that there's maybe the hope that they're going to do tshuva at some point, right? If there's not that love and that foundation, it becomes a much harder issue. So if they're into sports, what are you going to be talking about with them? You're going to be talking about sports, but you're going to find a way to try to weave in Jewish concepts while you're doing that. If you have a child who can memorize every what is it called? The statistics of all the sports players or all the basketball players, and they know that guy made that many, shots, and I mean, whatever. It's endless, the amount of information about each player and where they play and what they've done. So when you say, wow, that's amazing, so impressive, they must be in such great shape and whatever, it's your mind is incredible to me that you remember all of these things. I can't even imagine what a gadol you would be if you studied Torah with that memory that you have and all those details you can remember, and you like sneak that in there, and they can respond or not respond, but there's nuance to it, and it's hard because we know in our hearts what we want for them, and we know in our hearts what we feel and what we know, and they're maybe just not there, and so we have to find ways.
I'm so sorry. Before Yom Kippur, I feel so fearsome for them,
Yeah.
And I don't know. So this is the way I feel every high holidays. I feel that way.
Yeah, it's an incredible thing. We can take this concept, when you talk about it, what you just said, and you say, I feel fearful for them, and when you see someone doing something, and you cringe inside you, not from a judgment place, from a pain place, like, oh my God, I wish I could help them not do that, or to do that, whatever it is, like you feel like it hurts. It hurts when you see a fellow Jew doing things that are contrary to what we know is best, quote unquote, best for us as a Jewish neshama. It hurts. It hurts. If you've developed a certain sensitivity for Am Yisrael and a certain love for Am Yisrael as Hashem's children, you feel His pain. You can take what you feel about your own child, your own relative, and you understand now. You take HaKadosh Baruch Hu and times it by 1 billion. When He has His kids that are, going against His words by the trillions, and what He absorbs, as our Father, and the rachamim He has with us, we have to just hope. We have to hope that Hashem will have rachamim on all of us.
Amen.
Yeah, that and on those of us that are even further from Him, than we are, and that we just take it day by day and try to become better and stronger and keep adding lahosif and hosif and hosif, add to our repertoire, add to what we're doing, add to our davening, add to our mitzvos. I said this, I think, in the very first class. It's a mitzvah just to think about Hashem, just to think, Hashem, I love you. I love you. I love you, Hashem. I love you. Keep me close to you. It's a mitzvah. I mean, and we can do it anywhere and at any time. We are
on the step of Mashiach coming. It's even like
yeah. I mean, we have
trying to. I don't know to explain that yet. But through your class, I will, because when I started to be observant myself, maybe some 40 years ago, it took me a long time, and I could not get it to my children in the way I wanted to. I would have done better, and so it was a little strong, a little strict, a little too much. So they are not on that level now because perhaps of the way I.
I listen. Who knows? Every person has their path, and part of the Yetzer Hara's tools that we've discussed. Maybe that's another class. I'm going to make a note of that. Yetzer Hara's tools. Oh, that's going to be a good class. Hold on. Part of what we've discussed is the idea that the Yetzer Hara gets power through your beating yourself up. So there's no benefit in thinking those thoughts of if I would have, if I could have, if I should have. Those are.
Well, yes, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I feel much more comfortable now.
I'll tell you. I believe so much so that Mashiach is coming any second. I know it in every cell of my being. I want to tell you so much so that the other day I was with someone who I love very, very, very much. Very, very much. And he's not on the derech, unfortunately. But he's a wonderful person and I love him so much. And I said to him, you know, I want to tell you something, I want to share something with you. And I said, it's going to seem a little bit off the wall. And he said, okay. And I said, I want you to know, it's my understanding, maybe I'm wrong, but I hope I'm right, that when you hear the shofar of Mashiach, and I said, and you're going to hear it, and you're going to know, the whole world will, that Mashiach is here, you're going to have a few seconds. And in those few seconds, you're going to have a choice. Hashem's going to give you an opportunity that you can make tshuva or not. I said, please, if you're not going to do anything between now and then, when you hear the shofar, make tshuva. Accept it. I said, because I want to be with you. I hope we're going to be together. I hope I'm going to be there. I hope we're going to be together. I said, because I love you and I want you with me and I want to be with you. Wherever you are, I want to be.
This is gorgeous.
And he just kind of looked at me and he said, okay. He said, it sounds pretty out there. I said, it is pretty out there. I said, Mashiach coming is pretty out there stuff. I said, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen very soon.
I love it.
So
thank you.
Yeah. So this is really, you know, we have to trust in Hashem's infinite wisdom and His infinite mercy that, you know, when our observance of Hashem's Torah makes other people want to be around us, we know we're doing it right. When our integration of Hashem's world that He designed for us, His Kedusha and His Rachamim and His Ahava, when we begin to infuse that and it oozes from us, and people want to be around us, we know that we're doing it right, because that's the whole point of having a Jewish soul. That's the whole point, is that our mere existence should want to inspire other people to greatness. And that's how we know that we're on the right track. So if people are around us...
In your classes, we will be.
Oh, Bezat Hashem. Bezat Hashem. Bezat Hashem.
Dr. Mia,
yes.
Another thing that I want to commend you is that I thank you for your boldness. Thank you for being who you are and becoming who you are.
Oh.
You teach me so much. There is one particular class that brought me tears from many other classes that I have watched already. And that you talk about learning how to hold our space. Mm-hmm. And among others. And especially among others that may think different than us. And you still being able to hold your space. Thank you. Thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. You know, you guys think I'm doing you a favor. You're doing me a favor. You know, it's such a gift to have an opportunity to not just to learn, but to share what I learned. And to share my experience. You guys are giving me the gift, because if I was just sitting here by myself in this Zoom with no one to receive what I have to give, there would be no benefit. So really, you're the ones who are doing the favor. So I'm appreciative of you and your time and your efforts, and anybody who's listening to the Shiurim. It's a big blessing for me as well. So I appreciate that.
Definitely. If I may add one.
Please go ahead.
No, please, Danielle. Please go ahead.
No. I just want to know, Dr. Ozer, do you also tape those questions that we have? Because I think they're so important in the discussion that we are having. So are you taping that in some different ways?
No, it's all a part of the same recording. Everything, it's all, I audio record and I Zoom record. It's all in the recording, so that way people can go back and they can listen and reflect.
Very
Okay, I actually have to go because I have to make my daughter lunch. She forgot her lunch, and I have to make her lunch and drop it at school. But I want to wish you all an amazing rest of the week and a Shabbat Shalom. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll see each other again next week.
I'm sorry, Julia, I cut you off. I'm so sorry.
No worries at all. Next time.
Julia, you're going to help me remember next week that I'm going to start with the Tichel story and write down your question or comment, whatever you had, okay? Okay. Bye, everybody. Be well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Recording stopped.
Claudia, can you turn the oven on 450? The small oven, please.